Hello and welcome to my small channel. Recently, I've been obsessed with the show Apothecary Diaries. The show was so good that I ended up binging it in just a few days, and I loved it. I love the show's characters, its mystery, even though I'm a little too dumb to follow the mystery sometimes, but that's okay. That's okay. And with all the cool figures coming out for this show, I thought it'd be really fun to try and sculpt some of the characters in my style and see how that goes. I was really inspired by this figure that features both Mao Mao and Jinchi in their tea party designs, so I kind of want to do a two-part video making both figures, this one focusing on Mao Mao. I chose my favorite of Mao Mao's designs. I chose her tea party outfit because it's just so pretty and iconic. I love her usual hair design, but something about the double bun look instead of just one is so cute. And I may be impartial because of the main color being pink, but that's not the point. I sketched out an idea of how I wanted the figures to look and interact with each other, as it's my first attempt making two figures that go together. I found a pose I really liked on Pinterest, one that almost feels like the start of a dance. I really wanted to highlight the illusion of motion in my sculpture through the flow of the hair and the fabric. So with a plan in place, let's get started on sculpting. Starting with an armature, of course, I took tinfoil and wire to help build up and fill in a skeleton for Mao Mao. This allows the sculpture to be more lightweight and lets my cheap ass save on expensive clay. I slowly adjust it to take up her pose, and then I begin to fill it in with clay. The point of this step is to really just spread the clay around everywhere so that none of the skeleton is visible. It's okay if this part is messy, we'll fix it later. I chose a difficult ass pose for no reason. The armature kept looking wrong as I was filling it in, so I kept adjusting it, but it still looked wrong. It was so frustrating. I don't know what I was doing. Moving on to detail, let's start with the head, which I did decapitate and stab on a stick to make it easier to hold. Don't worry about that part. To start the face sculpt, I begin with the placement of the eyes. The eyes determine the placement of everything else on the face for me, so it's important to get it right. After I successfully mark where I want them and am able to flatten out the basic shape, I go in and push and pull the clay to create a lash line / eye fold. Then I add in the nose and fill out the forehead and mouth area until her side profile doesn't look a little busted. I try to keep Mao Mao's features like her eyes and her nose more sharp, a distrusting type of look. Yeah, she's got a little bit of a resting bitch face going on, but that was intentional. I'm actually pretty proud of the end product, and I think it came out pretty good. Then I go in and add her bangs, which I think I nailed. In my last video, I struggled so much with the hair, but I feel like I did Mao Mao's justice. And of course, I have to add her little buns, and she just looks so cute so far. I'm so excited to keep making her. Moving back to the body and eventually reattached head, I go in and start filling out her figure. I start to sculpt the muscles in her arm, fill out her chest, shoulder blades, and even her tummy to create a more realistic look. This step is super important and one I had to learn the hard way. If you don't do it, the figure looks super flat and awkward, which you can see with her legs here. And her legs will stay like that. Yeah, her legs are going to be mostly covered by her skirt later on, only barely peeking out, so instead of wasting my clay and time with creating some good anatomy, I'm just going to pretend they're not there. I promise, my figures usually don't have ugly legs. Now for the sculpting process, there are some parts I do with oven-baked clay. The bigger, more integral parts of this get done, like her face and her body, and there are some parts I sculpt and bake separately that I reattach later on so that the details aren't squished. For example, I sculpt her hands separately and will glue them on later. I start with snakes and 2 lumps of clay, and I slowly start to smooth them out and pose them. And then any remaining details, usually the smaller ones that would get lost in handling or squished, I like to do with air dry clay post-bake, which is what I would be doing right now, but there was a big fucking problem. The oven-baked clay that I was using is several years old, and I kind of forgot about her in the oven for just a tad bit too long, and she burned. Not only that, the clay bubbled up and created this ugly, lumpy look. I was honestly so devastated when this happened. I was so proud of how she was turning out, and it felt like this ruined her. Just looking at some of the damage was left was really disappointing. God her face was mostly okay, because if that had messed up, I might have actually scrapped this entire project. But luckily, or unluckily, I've dealt with this exact same problem before and I was able to fix it. This is a Howl's Moving Castle figure I made last year, and the same thing happened to him where I left it in the oven a bit too long and he became very lumpy. But with some sanding and air dry clay to help create a smoother finish, I was able to pull him back, and now you can barely ever tell he had a bunch of holes in his face. So let's replicate this process with Mao Mao. I took an old nail file that I exclusively used for clay since the Howl incident, and sand down her bubbled areas as much as I can. Some left huge craters of empty space, so that's why I take air dry clay to help fill in the holes left behind and smooth out any unfinished areas. And while I have the air dry clay out, I'm just gonna go ahead and glue her hands on now and smooth that into the figure. And now that that's finished, we can go back to your regularly scheduled program. So after that pass dries, I go in with another pass of air dry clay to add in all of the little details that I didn't get to yet. Details like her clothes, like her collar of her shirt or her sleeves. Long and flat pieces are not clay's strong suit, so I like to do that step with foam. I pattern out in place within folds of her skirt as if Mao Mao is in mid-motion. A strong wind blowing or she's moving, I carefully glue the foam to the figure. I originally used hot glue for this step, but I very quickly found out that I did not like it because it left way too many strings, so I strongly suggest just using super glue for this part. After I glue all of the pieces of foam to form her skirt, I go ahead and cut off all of the edges to create a more uniform shape. Mao Mao has really pretty, elegant sleeves that, honestly, I was so intimidated to try and recreate. But I came up with a pretty smart idea and cut out foam pieces to glue onto her arms to act as a base for the sleeves later on. As long as you make sure to blend and paint the foam, at the end product it looks pretty cohesive and goes with the sculpture. I also go in and add little details of how the fabric will fold with air dry clay on top of the foam. Just extra detail, man. I'm going in on that fucking shit. I also go in and blend in her sleeves and add the little edges of her cuffs to really pull it together. I also go in and add more details to her hair. When she's baking, she's laying down and resting, so the backside of her head can get a little bit flat, so I make sure to add a little bit of a bump and add her hair coming down. And after that pass dries, I glue a foam strip around to form her belt. And out of more foam, I create a bow with 2 long strands coming down to be attached. I then cut out a shape that's like an elongated lowercase n to act as the draped fabric that goes across Mao Mao's shoulders. It worked out a lot better than I thought it would, and I just glue it into place, and I also add extra fabric folds with air dry clay on top of it, just to be a little bit extra there. After everything dries, it's painting time, and as of right now, she looks like a multicolored mess, but trust me, the paint will really start to bring her to life. Her hair shading will be a simple gradient with a lighter and darker color added to the green base. I also add white highlights to really try and recreate the more anime hair shading style. Now, her face was a bit more of a struggle. I really disliked the original one I did and decided I needed to redo it. One of the biggest issues with the original is that I made the eyes way too small and it just didn't look like Mao Mao, so I sketched out her face, focusing on making bigger eyes and giving her a new expression that I think suits her more, which I'm actually pretty proud of. I go and darken her lash line, add some shading to the whites of her eye, and add in her big blue irises. I go in and give her a little eyeshadow and shading around her face. I thought the original one lacked contrast and she looked too pale, so I fixed it by adding simple shading like contour to her nose. I go back to blocking out the colors of her outfit, and I really love the color palette for her design here. I honestly love that color combo. Pink and green is so pretty, so I really enjoyed working with her colors. And going in and adding the base colors to all of her outfit elements really started to bring her together. I was starting to get really excited. I then go in to make sure I shade the folds of her skirt that I sculpted with air dry clay. It really helps bring them out and highlights that they're there. First, I start by laying down shadows with purple and highlights with a lighter pink that I then blend out. I make sure to do the same shading to the draping part of her fabric because I put in all the effort of sculpting those folds. You're gonna see the fucking folds. You're gonna see the detail and efforts I put into this. And then I realized I forgot a whole part of her dress. I quickly cut out pieces of foam and glue it on, and let's just pretend like it was always there. Something was missing, a little extra pizzazz, some extra accessories. We sculpt her hair accessories, Jinchi's hairpin because it's so cute, and some flower petals that I glue around her as if they're falling down. I liked this idea because it happens in the show and I think it feels more like an active scene going on. I also added extra sparkles to the flower petals to really give that extra bit of whimsy. And with that, now she's all done. I really love how she turned out. It's a bit of a rough process at times. I was ready to give up at so many parts. I'm glad I stuck with it and I'm super happy with how she turned out. I'm a little bit scared, but I can't wait to start making the matching Jinchi. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you stick around.